What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Commanders Daily. I'm Bob Matthews. I am your host. This is your one-stop shop for everything that's going on with the Burgundy and Gold. We are delighted to have you along with us as we're getting closer and closer to training camp starting. We are going to start this week talking about OTAs because OTAs, week 2 of them at least, kicked off today. We don't know what went on there today because today's practice session was not open. That's not going to happen until Wednesday, and we'll hear from Dan Quinn on Wednesday. We'll hear from some players, and we'll hear from Cliff Kingsbury as well. But today was the first day of the second week of OTAs. Obviously, after this, then we're going to have mini camp coming up right about June 10th and 11th, and then everybody's going to go their separate ways for vacation until we get ready for training camp, which, believe it or not, is going to be here next month. Yeah, it's June already. Basically, the way I look at this, we've got OTAs and minicamp, a little bit of a break. We play the U.S. Open. We play the British Open right after the British Open. If you're a golf fan, then it's time for training camp to start. It's going to be here before we know it. So what have we got going on? What's been making news here the last few days? Not a whole lot, but we'll run down what we do have. You know, this time of the year, let's just be honest, a lot of what we do is just kind of read between the lines and read the tea leaves on literally every quote that we get from everybody. I mean, we're analyzing it like the Zapruder film. So you have to take a lot of what you read online, a lot of what you see, hell, even places like this, with a little bit of a grain of salt. Now, what I am going to try and do, and what I have always tried to do in the offseason, is give it to you as honestly as I can. This is coming from a guy who has been in locker rooms, who has been on the beat, and kind of try and translate everything that you're reading, because a lot of what you get this time of year is clickbait. Having said that, of course, you can see the headline there that says Kingsbury high on B-Rob this year. So what do I mean by that? Well, there was a quote, from Cliff Kingsbury's comments last week when he met the media talking about B-Rob and he said part of the quote was that B-Rob has been really focused this offseason, seeing that, also saying, quote, the biggest thing that came out of last year was that any of the guys we asked to go in and played at a really high level, and that Kingsbury called his running backs room a really loaded group. He also said, quote, B-Rob is a guy who has played at an incredibly high level. I thought early in the year when he was really healthy, he was what we expect him to be, and that the focus this offseason has been great. He knows what this year means to him and what he can mean when he plays at that level. So what he's saying is essentially, hey, B-Rob knows that this is a contract year. He knows that if he either wants to stay in Washington and more than likely get paid with that second big contract, he really needs to come in and ball out. And Kingsbury is giving him somewhat of a vote of confidence, saying he's been doing all the right things during the offseason. Now, does this translate into success on the field? No, not automatically, but you like to hear that. There have been way too many instances when I've heard a coach say things like, guy's got all the tools, or, he's got everything that he needs, all the ability in the world to be a star. We've just got to see if he can put it all together. So he's not saying that. But what he is saying is that he thinks B-Rob has been doing the things that he needs to do in order to be successful. Again, whether that happens or not, we don't know. Is there a little bit of pressure on him? Yeah, they made some additions this offseason to the running back group. So yeah, there are things that, Robinson is going to have to do in order to keep his playing time. I mean, they say they are very high on Ja'Cory Croxett-Merritt, and they should be. This is a guy that had a monster junior season, didn't play a whole lot last year, and because of that, slipped in the draft. So, and again, he's a guy that's coming out, and let's face it, he's younger. He hasn't got 4 years worth of NFL tread on his tires. So I think if B-Rob has been working as hard as Kingsbury has said in the offseason, I think things ought to be okay. And I anticipate him starting training camp, obviously, as the number one back, and staying, the number one back throughout training camp, unless we see something dramatic that changes that. But I don't think that's going to happen. You are going to want to see Brian Robinson do a little bit better yards per carry than he did last year. I'd like to see that number go up. I'd like to see some more explosion from him. Still, he's a talented guy and he's a valuable piece of the offense. I think he's going to be just fine. And again, what have we been saying since the offseason began? We're giving the benefit of the doubt to this coaching staff because they proved to us last year they can press the right buttons and they seem to know what they're doing. All right, second up, when we talk about players, is we got a little bit of news, of smoke, of whatever you want to call it, on Luke McCaffrey. Again, when you look at all this conjecture, this time of the year, that's all it is conjecture. And again, it's reading the tea leaves. But you got to wonder, just knowing the way that NFL front offices work when it comes to stacking personnel, does Luke McCaffrey, even as a second-year player, is he already fighting for a roster spot? I mean, he was a third-round pick last year. He got a lot of reps, but the Commanders went out and took Jalen Lane, number 128 in the draft. A guy, a receiver, explosive, and similar traits to McCaffrey. So are they, do you need two guys like that on there? Why are we talking about this? Well, and again, when we talk about the chattering class and just kind of making conjectures in the offseason, that's where this comes from. Douglas Fritz of Clutch Points saying, for all the good things that were written about McCaffrey, it never showed up on the field. He had a dynamic quarterback on the field with him, and yet he didn't put up the numbers that you would expect, even though there was a lot of buzz to go with him. Again, is this a thing where you're thinking Luke McCaffrey's got to be a little worried about his roster spot? I don't really think so. I think there's probably room for both him and Lane and everything else that they want to do at wide receiver. And don't forget about the fact, and I think this could be part of the flaw in this thinking, is that Luke McCaffrey was a quarterback in college. This is only going to be his second year playing wide receiver. I thought he showed a lot of potential last year. Is he going to wind up being the next Julian Edelman or something like that? Obviously, we have absolutely no idea. But I think you saw enough there last year that you got to look at him and say, this is the kind of a guy that you think is really going to take a step this year, and you're going to wait for him to take that step to see if, in fact, he can be, maybe an exciting, legit number 3 receiver, something like that. He's got all the smarts. He runs the routes well. I think it's just about getting the playing time and becoming familiar with it. Again, I don't think you have to worry about his roster spot, but he will need to show, a good bit of improvement here in training camp for the coaches to keep faith in him. But I think they do have a lot of faith in him, and they're going to give him plenty of opportunities. Finally, and we do this every once in a while, we open up the viewer mailbag. Hey, I just want to say thank you to all of you guys out there, because the channel here has shown some incredible growth in the last couple of years. As a matter of fact, we picked up over 100 subscribers last year, and I just want to thank you guys for that, for showing the faith in us and, coming and enjoying the content that we're providing you. I want to give a shout out to William Cleary, who said, just subscribe to your channel. Appreciate the updates on the team, and cheers from New York. My second favorite city in the world, William, next to DC. And thanks for joining. And thanks for signing up with us. And we look forward to you staying with us throughout the year. So thank you very, very much for that. Remember, like and subscribe so you don't miss a day of it. Tell your friends we're going to be here throughout the year, 5 days a week, bringing you the very latest. Again, looking forward to Dan Quinn speaking later in the week, hearing what he has to say, the difference between week 1 and week 2 of OTAs. Ought to be exciting. It's going to do it for us for today. Back with you again tomorrow. Remember, like the wise man once said, if you're out on your bike tonight, as always, do wear white.